This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, the weekly Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. This is a show for January 15th, 2019, and I'm your host, Darren McKee. With me, as usual, are Adam Gardner.
What's up, Cuboids?
Christina Roach.
Hey, everyone.
And producer Pat.
Hey, checkers.
We're very happy to be back and happy to have you listening to us right now.
Yes.
We have a great show for you in this first official show of the new year. We have a game from Pat. Then we have predictions, which Adam's going to recap, and we'll give you some new ones for the year. But first, we wanted to give you a glimpse into our favorite segments over the past year. I'll go first. There's quite a few, around 50, and it's, when you look back, it's quite impressive. Not to say we have to toot our own horn, but you look back like, oh, right, we covered that. That was that past year. Also, what was the conclusion of that one again? I should listen to this show. So I really liked Pat's segment on passwords. I thought that was very useful and relevant. I always like when Pat does his little investigative stuff and then makes me think I should change my behavior. I also love Pat's Spot the Fake, of course, you know, when he does that. And that was episode 500 and 517. Adam, you did this one on reusable plastic bags, reusable versus plastic bags.
Yes.
And once again, people think, oh yeah, you always have to use reusable. It's like, well, do you? How many times do you have to use it before it becomes valid?
I think about it every time I check out at the grocery store.
I really like Christina's coverage of Yanni versus Laurel. And I also think this taps into Pat and Christina's musical expertise.
Yeah.
And so really having was it at a different pitch that you presented it at, Pat?
Right, that's correct.
Right, and so that's where I feel like this shines. I can't do that. And now you can see how you can just hear it differently by just changing a bit of the pitch. I do like when we do topical shows once in a while, if we plan ahead, which we often don't. So Christina's segment on cannabis from 519 was very much appreciated.
And a very clever segment title, may I add.
Yes, let's highlight the most important part of it. And as we've seen, there have been no problems in Ontario whatsoever since that rollout. Adam, you also did a segment on whether gun violence is increasing in Canada.
Yes.
And I like this because it's a segment I would have done. So that's very much aligned with what I find interesting and appealing.
Absolutely.
And Pat, you also did one, Did We Get Banksy'd? And I like the character of Banksy, and the big topic of the news of whether that thing really happened, whether it was shredded, whether it was planned ahead of time, whether Sotheby's was in on it. And I also like that little investigative exploration. So those are some of my favorite ones over the past year. Adam, what about you?
So for me, Pat's episode on Did We Get Banksy'd was also one of my favorites.
I see a trend.
Well, it was just that was fun, and we discussed it ahead of time, and we all kind of each individually speculated as to what might have been going on. So I found that's a lot of fun. Obviously, Pat's games are always fun, but it's hard to remember the specific questions when I see the titles. So I didn't pick a specific game of his. Episode 493, Darren talked about Jordan Peterson. I thought that was great because it's really hard to really to read enough to kind of get a good vibe off of someone and to hear someone, you know, whose opinion I kind of trust and share to give a really detailed breakdown. And I knew that Darren had done a ton of reading in preparation for that segment, so it gave me a really good overview. Not to say that, you know, I like to let someone else just sort of make my impression for me, but he gave me enough information that I can say, like, okay, I think I really get what this guy's about. And because it's kind of, you know, especially here in Canada, he's like a big looming force that people just talk about a lot.
Thank you. I'm actually pretty proud of that one, probably because I did the most work on that one segment compared to any other of the past year.
Yeah. Christina did a segment on that same episode on did LeBron James gain 7 pounds during a basketball game. I just found the concept really funny. And it was great. Just some of the breakdown of, is this even possible? Pat, in episode 495, did some coverage on treason tags. So I thought that was funny. You know, maybe it's a myth, maybe it's true, but not for the reason you think it is. And it kind of breaks down how things are, sometimes a little complicated. So that was a cool conclusion on what that one was about. And Christina in episode 508 talked about politicians using songs without the artist's permission. And this is something that comes up so frequently. It's like, oh, this band complained because they didn't use it and whatever. And it's like, to really get a detailed breakdown on the legality of how that works. And actually, like, it's a little more complicated than just like, these guys didn't give them permission. So
right.
That was cool. Darren, episode 516, talked about fundamental values differences. Now, I know that one created a bit of controversy here within the show, but the basic concept of it's not that people have fundamental differences, but that they kind of they draw that line at a different place, is very counterintuitive to how I think people usually think about disagreements. And I think that's kind of true, that often people, they're not really disagreeing on the fundamentals, but just the degree, right? A couple of my own segments that I enjoyed this year was I did one on the bicameral mind, and there was just a lot of work into that. I read an entire book to prepare for it, so that was a lot of fun, even though it's kind of something that plays on that line of pseudoscience and reality. And episode 421, we talked about hoax academic papers, so these so-called grievance studies papers. Just because I did so much reading and preparation for that segment, because there was a lot of people talking about it, and there was the responses and the criticisms and the defense of it and things like that. Not that there were any strong conclusions that I came to out of that segment, but just that's an ongoing thing. One of the researchers is getting into trouble with his school and stuff like that. So that was a fun one for me. So what about you guys in Toronto?
I guess I still kind of categorize these in my mind as something that surprised me or maybe changed my mind.
Yep.
And passwords for sure, episode 522 from Pat. And you guys pretty much stole my thunder. You pretty much said all the things that had to be said about it. It was really eye-opening, to say the least, and I thought I was so crafty with my passwords. So it was a really great segment, and I also loved the CSI Pat did for the Did We Get Banksy'd in 520. That was super fun. Like you said, Adam, we were all kind of discussing it, and I remember that first message from Pat where he was like, guys, and sort of under the same segment that kind of surprised me, well, I guess did surprise me. Darren, in 504, you talked about adult and youth correctional stats. And it was a headline that claimed that nearly half of Canada's incarcerated youth are Indigenous, according to Statistics Canada. And I was like, come on. And it ended up being true. And I thought you did a really great breakdown of that. And as depressing as it was to hear, I thought, Darren, you did a great job covering the UN climate change report in episode 520, because there was so much jibber-jabber about that on Twitter and on the news, and I thought you presented it in a really great, succinct way, and it really depressed me, unfortunately.
That's my wheelhouse.
Yeah. And special shout out to Peterson. What Adam said, I had a much better understanding of the guy just listening to your segment. Now, a funny segment's got to go to Adam. So this one, hands down, did Taylor Swift increase voter registration? And it's not so much about the segment, but it's the hilarity that ensued with all the puns that we made. On a serious note, Adam, it was a really great breakdown on how real data or facts can be manipulated or misrepresented in a way that suggests, in this case, that T-Swizzle was the sole reason voter registration increased. So, good job.
Thanks.
I also enjoyed the conclusion in episode 498 by Adam. After some extensive research that he did, he concluded that Dr. Oz was pretty much full of it most of the time.
Wait, what? Spoiler alert for something that already happened.
Right. So I have to say, favorite of the year, it has to go to, hands down, 484 as an overall favorite show, because it's the show that we submitted to the Mixcloud Online Radio Awards in 2018 and won in our category.
Yeah. Well said. Good point. Yeah.
I had so much fun with the Yanni versus Laurel segment because I caught it early. So I was able to pull music industry friends and peers, as well as checkers who chimed in. And I love that producer Pat was able to include those sound bites, like you said, with the various pitches. So that was really fun.
Yeah, and that turnaround was quick, because that came out a day before we recorded or something.
Right. It was yeah, that's right. It was perfect timing, and I just jumped on that one.
Just so listeners know, there's often a 3 to 4 or 5 day lag sometimes when we record and when we release the show.
Yeah.
So for us trying to time something that's topical in the news, we always sort of well, by the time people hear this, will it be as popular? And sometimes we're right at the beginning, and sometimes we miss something by about a day. So then I was like, why didn't they talk about it for 9 days? Because that's the timing and just how it happened.
Yeah, our podcast is pretty complicated. We can't churn out a show as quick as those South Park guys,
Now, outside of my beloved Dr. Stuart Robbins, because Come on, he's like the fifth Beatle around here. But because of my interest in cooking and cooking myths and the science of cooking, I have to say one of my overall favorite segments of the year or shows is when we had Stuart Fairmont on. And Pat bought me his last spice book for Christmas. And it's fascinating and as beautiful as his Science of Cooking book. Plus, he's absolutely hilarious to play games with. So that's it for me.
All right. Well, going last in this sort of a thing, well, I'm just going to be repeating a lot of things that were already said, but I'll say Adam, 44 plastic bags versus reusable bags. I thought this was a really important segment, and the numbers were really surprising. In fact, that whole show was great for all the reasons Christina said. Also, episode 491 and 512. I love that you're sticking with this Amelia Earhart story. As they come up, you debunk them.
Yeah.
Shout out for your coverage of vasectomies as the best game of Spot the Fake this year.
Well said.
Yep.
Christina, Yanni versus Laurel on 499. It was really a fun segment, and that's the sort of thing that really interests me. We all had a fun time doing it. Bonus was that Stuart Robbins was here in the flesh to do it. Also, just a couple of episodes later, your segment on 501 about grapefruit and drug interactions.
Yeah.
I was really skeptical when a friend told us this, and it turned out to be true. Darren, episode 518, your segment on abortion laws in Canada, mostly for personal reasons. This came about because of listeners writing in to fact-check things I had said, and I appreciate you doing a good job of setting the record straight.
Thank you.
Also, episode 520, you did a segment on the UN climate change report, which was, as Christina said, a bummer, but I think a very important topic to cover.
So speaking of favorites, we have to give a special shout out to all the awesome guests that we've had in 2018.
For sure, yeah.
And I think I'll just rhyme them off, if you guys don't mind. Food scientist Stuart Fairmont on the science of the perfect roast turkey and the science of cooking, who was on 2 shows. Andras Pinter from the European Skeptics podcast on skepticism in the tourist industry. Barry Panas, who is on twice this year on errors in textbooks and the physics of curling. Elon Dubrovsky and Dina Tserlin on the link between 2 of Elon's favorite sitcoms and changes to the Ontario sex ed curriculum. The fifth Beatle, Stuart Robbins, times 5. Flat Earth, video compression, Lagrangian points, parallax, and the late heavy bombardment. Of course, Mr. Jim Davies on memory palaces. Paul Shapiro on clean meat. We reran an interview with Brian Tomasic about wild animal suffering. Joe Kuhill, a.k.a. Professor Buzzkill, who came on to bust history myths. Ryan Armstrong from Post-Truth Health and Bad Science Watch, who talked about urine-based tests for sex of fetus.
It's funny to hear you list all those things. My God, we had so many good guests last year.
We did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to send out a special congrats to Dr. Stuart Robbins.
Oh, yes, for sure. Stuart works on New Horizons, and if anyone was watching on New Year's Day, that was very exciting.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Thanks to all my co-hosts, and of course, thanks to all of you for listening to us all this time. I thought it was interesting that Pat said, going last. A lot of us have already covered what he has said, but it didn't necessarily have to be that way. Because after about, say, 52 shows, we did some reruns. There's about 3 segments a show. That's 150 topics.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, 4 people picked very similar segments. So either we're all group thinking over here, or we do recognize quality and something tends to stand out. So it'd be curious to hear what the listeners think their favorite segments are, and they write in it whether it would align with the views of our show.
Yeah, we may be a little biased towards segments that were fun to record, but I would be curious to see if the listeners have a different take.
Well, for those of you who think science and critical thinking is a game, well, you're right. Sometimes it is. Pat, another game.
All right, here we go with another edition of everyone's favorite mostly guessing game, Name That. We've done this the last couple of years or so. Hopefully you guys haven't looked ahead in anticipation. Again this year, I bring you Name That, the 2018 edition. We have 5 questions. As usual, I'll give you a piece of information and then ask you to name that from the choices provided. I've randomly chosen the order, and we'll rotate. Christina, you are first. Name that. What was the top Google search worldwide in 2018? A, World Cup. B, Anthony Bourdain. C, Stan Lee. Or D, Black Panther.
I'm going to go with A World Cup.
Christina says A World Cup. Next is Adam.
I'm going to say Black Panther. I haven't looked up the Google results, but I did look up what movies did best when I was looking up the predictions, and I know that it did very well.
All right. Adam says Black Panther, and last is Darren.
I would also say World Cup. It's the World Cup.
It seems like a trick question, but
I know there's maybe more internet usage in certain countries on Earth, but a lot of those countries still play football/soccer. And even though those movies and Stanley dying and Anthony Bourdain dying were very important and popular, we'll see. I pick World Cup.
Darren agrees with Christina, and they are correct. The answer is A World Cup. Anthony Bourdain was number 7. Stan Lee was number 4. Black Panther was number 5. Rounding out the top 5 were Avicii at number 2 and Mac Miller at number 3.
What was the second one?
Avicii, it's a electronic
DJ.
artist.
He's a DJ
yeah.
who died. Question number 2. Adam, name that. What was the most streamed music artist on Spotify in 2018? A. Post Malone, B. Ed Sheeran, C. Drake, or D. Queen?
If the radio is any indication, it's Ed Sheeran. We doing okay on breadsticks over here? That's my guess.
What?
So there's a funny picture of Ed Sheeran, and he looks like a waiter, and it's captioned, "We're doing okay on breadsticks." I'm going to send it to you guys.
Adam says Ed Sheeran. Next is Darren.
Well, he got me in my feelings, so I will pick Drake.
Darren says Drake, and lastly is Christina.
I remember Drake had like bajillions of listens and broke a record, but you're saying specific to Spotify, correct?
Yep.
I'm going to go with Post Malone.
Christina says A. Post Malone, and Darren is correct.
Damn it. I went
Six
against
God.
Yeah.
Drake had 8.2 billion streams.
It's ridiculous.
Post Malone was number 2. Ed Sheeran was number 5. Rounding out the top 5 are number 3, XXX Tenacion, and number 4 was J Balvin, who I have no idea who that is.
I have no idea who that is
That's
either.
fascinating. Pat, do you happen to have the numbers for number 2 Post Malone?
I don't know.
Okay. I just wondered, did Drake, was it double or was it close?
They actually didn't publish them.
Interesting.
Question number 3. Darren, name that. What was the top searched phrase on Google by Canadians in 2018? A. Toronto van attack. B. Ontario election. C. Humboldt Broncos. Or D. Cannabis.
Good question, Pat.
That is a good question.
Yes.
I think I will pick cannabis.
Darren says D. Cannabis. Next is Christina.
I got to go with cannabis.
Christina agrees with cannabis. And lastly, Adam.
I was almost tempted to say Ontario election, but that's a very Ontario-centric thing. I live in Quebec now, so I voted in a Quebec election. So I'm going to say cannabis. I think it's kind of the thing of the year.
Oh, going for broke.
Everyone agrees that cannabis was the top Canadian searched phrase. The answer is C. Humboldt Broncos. Ontario elections was number 3. Toronto van attack was number 6. Cannabis was number 5.
Oh,
Fascinating.
Rounding out the top 5 were Winnipeg Jets at number 2 and Canada Postal Strike at number 4.
people want to know.
That's because
why
everybody was waiting for their cannabis. They were wondering what was going on.
It's interesting to think about what topic cuts across different demographics in different regions. Or there's just so many people in Ontario that were so concerned about the election.
Yeah.
Question number 4. Christina, name that. What was the best-selling book of 2018 according to Barnes & Noble? A. Fire and Fury Inside the Trump White House by Michael Wolff. B. Becoming by Michelle Obama. C. Fear, Trump in the White House by Bob Woodward. Or D. The President is Missing by Bill Clinton and James Patterson.
I'm a fan of this lady, so I'm going to go with B. Michelle Obama.
Christina says Becoming by Michelle Obama. Next is Adam.
I'll be honest, I haven't read any of these because there's no robots in any of them. So I'm going to say Becoming Michelle Obama.
Adam agrees with Michelle Obama. And lastly, Darren.
Some good choices again. I also think it's interesting there's only one of them that's fiction. And it's written by a guy who's famous for writing best-selling novels. But Michelle Obama got so much money to write this book. I think I'll also pick Michelle Obama.
You all agree that Michelle Obama is number 1, and you are all correct, despite the fact that this book came out very late in the year. Becoming by Michelle Obama is number 1. Fire and Fury Inside the Trump White House is number 3. Fear, Trump in the White House is number 4. The President Missing is number 6. Rounding out the top 5 are The Wonky Donkey at number 2 and Girl Wash Your Face at number 5. But I thought it was really interesting there were so many political books in the top 10.
That's a good point.
Wonky donkey.
Oh, it's what people are fixated on, / afraid of, / whatever. That's what's going on.
I believe Michelle and Barack, for each of them doing a book, got a $65 million deal.
Wow.
So I'm like, they must have projected sales. Will this book sell at least $20 million worth of books?
That's a good point.
So going into the last question, I have Darren in the lead with 3, Christina trailing with 2, and Adam behind with 1. Last question. Adam, what was the top search in 2018 in the U.S. which started with how to? Name that. A, how to play Mega Millions. B, how to get the old Snapchat back. C.
It just sounded like an old person. How do you get the old Snapchat back?
I'm very sorry. I don't even understand.
Good old
that anymore.
Snapchat.
Yeah.
C, how to buy Bitcoin. Or D, how to vote.
Well, before you even listed them, Pat, my mind went to how to vote because not everyone got Taylor Swift's Instagram message, so that's going to be my guess.
All right. Adam says how to vote. Next is Darren.
I think Adam made a decent point. I will pick how to vote also.
Darren agrees. D, how to vote. And lastly, Christina.
I'm going to go with Snapchat.
Christina says Snapchat. She went rogue in the hopes of tying it up. However, it did not work.
Oh, you sounded so hopeful there for a second. I thought I did.
Darren is your winner. Both Darren and Adam are correct. The answer is D, how to vote. How to get the old Snapchat back was number 6. How to buy Bitcoin was number 8. How to play Mega Millions was number 3. Rounding out the top 5 are number 1, how to vote, and number 2, how to register to vote.
Wow.
How to buy Ripple was number 4, and how to turn off automatic updates was number 5.
I couldn't have foreseen that I would have won this game, but maybe there's other predictions we actually got right. Adam, is that true?
So first, let's look. Let's round up our 2018 predictions to see, how people did. Who's the best at predicting the future? That's not a real thing. People can't really predict things. All those people who tell you they're psychics are fakes. But this is kind of a thing we like to do for fun, and we just do it mostly out of habit. So. The first question was top grossing films. We always do top grossing films. It's always like, oh, did we mean domestic, international? So last year I said I want to do international this year. So I asked the question was what's going to be the top grossing international film? I predicted Avengers Infinity War would be number 1. That's correct. Darren said Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which was number 3. So he missed that one. Pat said the same thing, Jurassic World. And Christina said Avengers Infinity War for number 1. So running at the top 3 was Black Panther at number 2, which was actually the top grossing domestic box office release in 2018, and number 2 internationally. That's worldwide. Now, I made a side prediction. I said Solo, a Star Wars movie, would have the worst opening weekend for a recent Star Wars film, and I categorized that as The Force Awakens and beyond. Now, this was correct. Its opening weekend was $84 million. The Force Awakens made $248 million. Last Jedi made $220 million, and even Rogue One made $155 million. By almost any metric, the other films doubled to quadrupled the earnings of Solo. We couldn't hardly call it a commercial failure, but it didn't live up to the other film's successes. So while a lot of Star Wars movies are usually number one of the year, it was 22nd.
I think it's because it was terrible.
It's probably because it was terrible.
Oh.
Yeah. I also predicted it would have the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score of any theatrically released live-action Star Wars film. That would be worse than The Phantom Menace's 55%. This was incorrect. Solo, a Star Wars story, received an undeserved, in my opinion, 70% Rotten Tomato rating, putting it at a higher rank than The Phantom Menace, 54%. or Attack of the Clones, 65%, but lower than Revenge of the Sith, 79%. Which to me is nonsense, since Revenge of the Sith is by far the worst of the prequels, but what do I know about Star Wars?
Weren't you on TV once?
I was on TV once. Darren's favorite category, celebrity death. We all missed this one. I predicted that Frank Oz, actor, puppeteer, director, famous for playing Yoda, Grover, many things, would die. I didn't hope he would. I'm glad he didn't. Pat predicted Bob Barker would die. He is still alive. And Christina predicted that Prince Philip would die, and he is also still alive. Darren hates this category and refuses to make predictions, and we respect that, but still kind of enjoy making that prediction.
You don't really respect it.
AKA, don't really respect it. Yeah.
Whatever. I don't respect it enough to not do it myself. Political predictions. I said, despite bellyaching by provincial governments and irrelevant opposition parties, marijuana would be legalized in 2018. And as has been the case in many other countries, it states where it was legalized, there would be no disastrous consequences. I'm inclined to say true. I know that there were some disastrous consequences for those expecting to get their marijuana, mostly in Ontario. Do you guys feel that
I wouldn't consider those disastrous consequences.
Okay. I was more making a joke that, people were like, oh, think about the children, and the social fabric would fall apart and things like that. Darren asked us what month we thought it would happen in. So it was legalized on October 17th, though the date had not been announced before we made the prediction. So this really was a guess on our parts. I said October, nailed it. Darren said September, missed it by a month. Christina said August, and Pat said October/November. So, he gets it, even though
He gets
one
half
in
a
six,
point, I
right?
think. Yeah, it's cheating.
It is what it is. Some people make very broad predictions. Some people make very specific predictions. So that's just how it is.
That is the meta lesson of this whole segment.
Yeah. They say there's going to be an election this year, So in the Ontario provincial election, Darren predicted a Liberal win, and they did not win. Doug Ford's Conservatives won. He said in the U.S. the Democrats would get the Senate but not the House, but the Republicans maintained a Senate majority, and Democrats took the House of Representatives. Pat predicted the Liberals would lose, which was correct. Christina predicted that Joe Biden would announce his run for president, but this has not been officially announced, but it has been speculated by many. Some of us made sports predictions because some of us follow sports. In the Winter Olympics, Pat predicted that the Canadian women's team would win silver, and Christina predicted that the U.S. women's hockey team would win gold. And they are both right. The U.S. won gold and Canada won silver, so good job to both of you. Darren said people would bicker about how to count medals. I didn't even look this up. I gave him the point. People bicker about how to count medals. I'm sure it happened. I didn't need to follow the Olympics to know that's true. For sure it was true.
It just improves my ratio.
For general sports predictions, Pat said that there would be a Cavaliers-Warriors final and that Golden State would win. Both of these appear to be correct.
Yes. And
Christina predicted that Portugal would reach the final round in the FIFA World Cup. It looks like it was France and Croatia. So... looks like Christina.
Hey, I get 0.5 because the second part of my prediction was that I would have heart palpitations and Pat would tell me to stop yelling at the TVs, and that happened.
That happened, no point.
That happened, but no point. What does that even mean? Yeah, I didn't include that because that was like a joke prediction, but we can count it if you want, Christina. It's there you go. Tech prediction. I had this prediction saying that there would be like a think piece making a case for sex with sex bots to be rape. And this didn't really happen. There was no big news in 2018. But when I went and looked for it, there had been a pretty big article in 2017 about something like that, about basically a sex bot that you could like simulate rape with, which kind of pissed off a lot of people. So maybe I should have searched that before I made the prediction, but whatever. Darren predicted that Netflix movies would be in theaters and that they would be released in theaters and at home in the same time. Now, they released 3 movies in theaters prior to streaming in order to be eligible for the Oscars. There was a delay, but it was a delay by like a week or two. So I'm going to go ahead and say that's good enough, and I'll give him a point on that.
I'll take 70% of a point, to be fair.
It's too complicated. I don't want to do the math. Get a full point. You'll like
Done.
it.
You'll like it.
Christina, you said there will be more driverless food delivery cars, which is like, this is hard to quantify. But I did find a lot of articles from January this year talking about them starting to use self-driving cars to deliver food. And I also found a July 2018 article stating that Ford was doing this with vans to deliver food in Miami. So I'll give that one to you. That sounds good.
Thank you.
Pat,
you're being very generous.
am I?
Because you're not getting any points.
These points do not matter for anything, so whatever. I'll just throw them around. It's fine. I never win this game anyway. Pat, so I didn't know what to give on this one. So you predicted voice would be a big deal, talking about voice-driven apps like Siri and Google. So it's hard to quantify this. Do you feel that this is an accurate prediction?
I absolutely get the point for that.
I think he gets the point for that. Everything's all about Alexa.
Everyone's got an Alexa in their house now.
Okay,
I don't. Not everyone.
But many people have Alexa.
Oh, there you go. That's what you meant to say. Sorry.
The Alexa was a very big thing. All of those voice-controlled little assistants were a big thing last year.
They had a big year, yeah.
All right. Science predictions. Pat said that the Large Hadron Collider would find hints of particles that looked like they were bending the laws of physics. Now, I couldn't really find any articles to indicate this. I just kind of Googled a Large Hadron Collider for news, and I didn't see anything. I figure that would have been a big headline.
Yes.
Christina, you said Elon Musk would do something that everyone would freak out about. How true
he
is that?
Smoked pot and everyone lost
He
their
smoked
mind.
pot on Joe Rogan, and everyone thought it was like the end of society. And then he's like dating a musician, and everyone went crazy about this. And like every time he opened his mouth or tweeted something or like blinked, people freaked out. So you get a point. I'd give you more than 1 point if I could on that one. You also said that China and India would establish themselves as serious contenders in space. Now, China's Chang'e 4 probe landed on the moon on January 3rd. Oh, so that's close.
So close.
They would have launched it in 2018. How do we feel about that one?
I think because India hasn't really done much unless you're going to get to it.
India hadn't done much.
No point.
All right. What do we got here? I'll give you a no point, but I won't take away a point either. How does that work? Okay. Darren predicted that there would be over 3,500 exoplanets because there were something like 2,500 last year. And as of January 10th, NASA is at over 3,800 confirmed exoplanets. So I don't think 300 of those were in the first 10 days of 2019. So I'm going to say,
cool,
good one on Darren there.
Nice.
It's also interesting there's that many exoplanets.
That's a lot of exoplanets. I'm feeling good about that. I'm reading the 3 Body Problem books right now, and
excellent trilogy. I recommend it to everyone.
I'm really enjoying that.
Space is big, yo.
Yeah. I predicted that a solar event of some kind would cause significant damage, and I specified over $1 billion to electronic devices on half of the Earth, causing widespread power outages and loss of equipment. It didn't happen. I'm glad it didn't happen. I still think it's gonna at some point. I think people need to be ready for this mentally and technologically, but we'll see. And in other predictions, I said, I gave a pretty specific prediction here. I said, following a number of people's careers being destroyed during 2017's #MeToo campaign, a person in the entertainment industry, that being movies, TV, or music, would lose work. And here's this key part. I said, a publicly stated firing or cancellation of a contract by a company, not due to anything they did, harassment or assault, but rather due to something they said. I even specified here, such as Matt Damon's recent statements, okay? Or didn't say, such as Ben Affleck being criticized for not speaking up in a certain place, related to assault and harassment in the entertainment industries. So I was a bit too specific. I made this prediction because of a petition that was going around to have Matt Damon's cameo removed from Ocean's 8. I didn't mention that in my segment. I just assumed that was going to happen. And all of this did, in fact, happen. But it wasn't confirmed by the film's director why his cameo was cut from the film. So he gave some BS reason about it didn't work with the pacing and it's complicated and all of that. I think it was probably because of this controversy, but they didn't mention it. I was very specific in my prediction to say that it would be publicly announced, so I'm going to say no point on that one. But
we can give you half a point.
You want to give me half a point on that?
Why not?
It complicates the math, but I can...
I think you can handle that fraction.
I can do that because it puts me up to 10, so I can do divide by 10. That's easy. So, if we look at these numbers here, I had 4.5 right out of 10, so that gives me a 45% accuracy rate. Darren, you had 3 out of 8. That's 37.5 if my math is correct. Pat, you had 6 out of 8, which is a 75% accuracy rate. And Christina, you have 4 out of 8, which is 50%. So Pat did really well. It was because of his basketball predictions that were right on the nose. So good job on that one.
So good job, Pat. And one of the reasons we do this segment is to highlight how it can be fallacious when you hear someone making really good predictions.
Yeah.
Pat did a good job. Adam used a ratio. You rarely hear anyone discuss a ratio.
Oh,
They
no.
always count the hits and not the misses. So usually the idea is like, if you just make 15 to 20 predictions, bury the ones you didn't make, especially if something was very significant and less likely to occur, people will just trust you more.
Well, and the fact that I follow basketball and that it was not that difficult to predict who would be in the finals and who would win really puts me at an advantage.
As a person who doesn't follow basketball, I was really impressed with the accuracy of your statements.
That's right. So Adam and I got penalized for trying hard. I guess that's what comes out.
I really follow Star Wars, but So for predictions for 2019, similar categories. So I'll start with mine, and then people can chime in with their own. So again, we want to talk about worldwide gross for top grossing films. I think the obvious answer may relate to what was number 1 this year, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the top grossing movie of 2019 will be Frozen 2.
Wow. Okay.
It'll be more interesting when we talk about it next year.
Maybe.
But yeah, it'll be Avengers.
Okay. Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that there's another John Wick movie. It's nice that there's a Fast and Furious spin-off, as I learned when I was researching this, but I can't see it being anything but Avengers. Even Star Wars won't beat it.
Well, Star Wars again, yeah. We'll see. I think people are getting a little tired of Star Wars, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I was going to say Star Wars Episode 9, but it's coming out mid-December, and I've been down that road before. So I read Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise ever. So I'm going to go with the Pokemon Detective Pikachu movie.
That movie looks so damn funny.
It
Watch the
looks
trailer
so
if you
fun.
hadn't seen
Ryan
it.
Reynolds plays Pikachu.
Oh,
yeah.
well, that's appealing.
It's like this super grim, realistic Pokemon, but then Pikachu talks, and it's really weird. It looks really amazing. I'm a bit of a Pokemon fan, as you guys
If
may
you
know.
love Deadpool and Green Lantern, only in combination, then you should see this movie.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to agree with Darren. I think it's going to be Avengers Endgame, but I'm going to predict that, side prediction, I'm going to predict that Toy Story 4 is going to do very, very, very well internationally.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I think we need some specificity on that, Pat. Saying it's doing very well. I agree with you. It'll do very well. Do you mean over $1 billion?
We can isolate the non-domestic numbers if you want to put a specific prediction on there, Pat.
It's going to be number 2.
Number 2 worldwide, or number 2 just the international numbers?
Worldwide.
Number 2 worldwide.
Yeah.
I like the specificity. That makes my work easier. 2020, Adam. Well, thank you. Celebrity death, Darren's favorite category. I predict that William Shatner, that is James Tiberius Kirk from Star Trek, will die. I hope it doesn't. He's hilarious, and he's great, and I love all his stuff, but that's my prediction.
I'm sticking with Prince Philip.
Nope.
And in case you guys were wondering, he's still listed on the death list prediction website with the title beside his name of casual racist.
It's fantastic.
I guess that makes it more palatable to pick someone who's going to die. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, but he's not number 1 on that list, so I am taking a chance.
So this year I'm going to go with Henry Kissinger.
And I'll just say I think we should write to celebrities and ask them which one of us they think will die.
Darren will say the same thing every year.
Including our friends and family, which ones they predict will die. No, that's a new thing. I haven't said that particular thing before.
I'm pretty sure you said that last year, Darren.
Really?
You said it a couple years ago. I don't know if it was last year, but we could for sure tweet that at William Shatner, and he's on Twitter all the time. So
I am predictable.
Maybe he'll probably pick the person who sends it. Political prediction. Mine's a bit long because I wanted to be specific. The U.S. will not have a wall covering the entire U.S.-Mexico border by the end of 2019. Specifically, the wall will not be, and I quote, a contiguous physical wall or other similarly secure, contiguous, and impassable physical barrier, as the executive order issued by the U.S. President asked. Should any portion of such a wall be built, it will not have been paid for by Mexico by any reasonable interpretation of pay for, although there will certainly be red hat wearing people who will claim that this was the case through some convoluted way to trace money.
Well, that's a very long-winded, to me, obvious prediction. I mean, even if they got a full green light, it would take years.
Well, he doesn't have years.
Well, I know.
Well,
we'll see.
I don't think he has years. But yeah.
Okay, Adam, you picked a very difficult one that is probably going to be true anyway. On my side, there's a by-election coming up where it's very important that the NDP leader currently wins it, and I think he will. So that's one. Two, we have a federal election coming up. I think Trudeau's Liberals will win that. And I'm also curious about what the panel thinks. Trump will be impeached. And I think he probably won't, although it'll be very tempting. It's probably better strategically to wait till next year to impeach him if they do it at all. And if he is impeached, it definitely won't be full. The Senate will not follow what the House does if they do it.
Federal election, I think the Liberals will win again. I don't think they'll do as well as they did last time, but I'm not sure the competition's bringing enough to the table to do much about it. I don't think Trump will be impeached. I think no matter what happens, he's not leaving that office in 2019, and I'm not sure he's going to accept it in 2020, but that's a future prediction. So
I feel differently than Adam does. I actually predict that Donald Trump will resign in 2019. I think he's essentially going to rage quit.
Wow, good prediction.
As far as the federal election is concerned, I think the Liberals will win, but I agree that it's not going to be by the same margin that they did last time.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Liberals will win. It's not going to be pretty, but maybe everyone will learn a few things from it. And as far as Trump is concerned, I think he's going to step down because he's going to be painted into a corner of so many legal woes that have tentacles that reach out to his family members. I think that he's going to resign as a result.
Does anyone have any sports predictions? Because I certainly don't.
Toronto Raptors will make it to the NBA Finals this year.
Ooh, bold prediction.
I'm agreeing with Christina's prediction that they will make it to the finals. However, I'm also predicting that they're going to lose to the Golden State Warriors.
And Christina, out of curiosity, do you think they're going to win?
I think we've got what it takes to win this year.
That's speaking like a nice parent to their child.
He's real if you believe he's
I'll deal
real.
with
What
you
the hell
later.
does that mean?
We gave 110%. It was some good hustle out there, and I think we have what it takes to make it.
Well, we are number one
Platitudes.
in the entire NBA, Eastern and Western Conference right now by a couple games. So,
Still early in the season.
I have to say, it's pretty early in the year.
Science and technology predictions. So my prediction is that someone, probably a human, will claim to have an AI that passed the Turing test. If the AI was so smart, they'd just make the claim themselves.
That's cute.
oh, that's great, Adam.
That's cute. Let's see. I think we will have 5G compatible laptops this year.
Ooh, wow. That'd be cool.
I think worldwide, the internet will officially become bigger than TV in terms of minutes spent consuming content.
It's
Okay.
not yet?
Not yet. It's close.
Wow.
Yeah. So that includes the internet includes people watching TV on the internet.
Yeah.
TV is just TV.
Yeah.
And then to make it something a bit more specific, there'll be at least 3 deaths from self-driving cars.
Ooh,
Interesting.
Makes me uncomfortable.
Mister, I have a problem with the celebrity death segment.
Yeah, of a particular person delighting in their death or not. This is because I'm concerned about these people.
But that's a pretty decent prediction given the fact that there's going to be a lot more of them on the road.
Yeah.
And it's probably still going to be way safer than people driving, but accidents are bound to happen, right?
Yeah. I have a couple, science and tech. I predict SpaceX, with help from NASA, will finally send a crewed flight to the International Space Station.
You mean they will be impolite?
Crude, yes. And as far as tech, I'm going to make a very bold prediction. I predict there's going to be a big backlash against Twitter, and it will become less relevant, leading to its inevitable demise, like Vine.
That'd be
Oh,
fantastic.
wow. Really?
I only have one prediction, and it's related. I predict that in 2019, we'll see the U.S. government beginning to step in and regulate social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter.
I thought about that too, that some sort of regulation, I think, will probably occur, if only because the media giants they'll play ball with a more benign version before it's forced upon them.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other predictions? I had 2 quick ones. I said no Sailor Moon Crystal in 2019, and that's very specific, and I don't think those Dream Arc films are going to be seen in 2019. anywhere in the world. And for the first time since 2016, I will not have a child in 2019.
That's a bit ambiguous, so I really hope you're not going to do anything drastic with your current children. I will say the under 5 child mortality rate will continue to decrease. Hopefully a very safe prediction. Yeah. Thank you, Adam. I know it's a lot of work to look into our silly musings and see where we end up, but it is a fun retrospective.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening once again. Until next time, think better to act better.
Peace out, Cuboids.
Stay classy, not smart-assy.
Good night, everyone.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at TRC_podcast.
Takes.
Christina agrees with cannabis, and lastly, Adam.
We know that.
I was almost